Let's recap where we're at with the 3 series last night and some bigger picture stuff. So if you look at last year for the playoff run, you have 15 series, right? Every year we have 15 series, but we saw a lot of upsets if you look at the seeding part of this historically. So look, first round, 8 series, then 4, then 12, and then the finals. That's 15 series. Last year, 15 series, 7 times the lower seed won the series. That is almost double what the average is about 4. It's also the most we've had since, I think, 5 in 1995. I was looking at Hollinger's stuff on The Athletic, so I want to give him credit for this. But when you go, wait, 7, like that's a lot. Yes, it is. It is a lot, but it's also kind of baked into the Miami Lakers number of last year because Miami's got 3 of them. Then the Lakers got 2. So you're like, all right, well, that's 5 of the 7. So now this is starting to make sense. And then Golden State and the Knicks have 1. So 7's a lot. And this year, with it being so muddled in the West and so many of the teams after Boston, the East, where you just went, well, I guess a lot of stuff could happen. Philadelphia and New York feels like it's probably right where it's supposed to be. 2-1, 2-1 either way. And yet, when I look at the Embiid part of it, it's fascinating because he's clearly hurt in the first 2 games. I thought he looked much better last night. But then we find out that he's dealing with Bell's palsy, which is its own challenge. He drops 50 on the Knicks, 13 and 19, 5 of 7 for 3. And he's really starting to feel himself, just the 3-point touch and then the closeouts. And it doesn't really matter. Like they've left him open a few times, but now it's almost like they were leaving him open going, cool, go ahead and shoot that, even though his numbers are better than these other bigs that want to take the shot from outside. But that almost feels like a win because you're not fouling him. And because Hartenstein ended up with 5 fouls and then Mitchell Robinson ended up being hurt and only playing 12 minutes, it was just a massive challenge against Embiid on top of everything else because Precious Achiuwa, who I've always really liked, part of the rotation for a good chunk of the regular season once they acquired him, Tibbs doesn't want to play him. Tibbs doesn't want to play him in this series. And then he had to go to him a little bit last night. So it was a spicy Embiid dropping 50 points. If New York had gone up 3-0, I had something else planned for Embiid, but I'm not going to do that after he gets 50. But it was spicy. There was a lot of stuff with him last night where I was like, man, he is pushing the limits of what you can get away with in a game. And the Mitchell Robinson play was flat out dirty. He got called for the flagrant. DiVincenzo went up to him, and Embiid was kind of like, get away from me. I always wonder what it's like to be that big. Not always, but there are times, let's rephrase that. There are times where I'm like, what is it like when you're that big and somebody DiVincenzo's size comes up to you to be like, hey, I've got to stick up for my teammate. Like, even if Embiid were bad at fighting, even if he were just soft, it was like, ooh, ouch, that hurts. I'm not into this. It still would feel like it'd be impossible for him to not crush somebody considering the size advantage that he has. All right, so that aside, Embiid said, hey, look, I was worried about, I had the Kuminga flashbacks. He fell on my leg, and that's why I kind of like grabbed Mitchell's leg and threw him out of the way. And then he also kind of like when he lands on him, he throws him off of him all over again. I think he was mad he didn't get a call at the other end. Then he was like, fuck it. I'm just going to grab this guy's leg. That's what I thought happened. Because Embiid was really upset about a bunch of other calls that he didn't get throughout the entire night. He hit a 3 on Brunson where he was like, oh, wait, remember to fall down. Oh, this isn't really going to be, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I'll stand up. So he kind of like half goes to fall down and then decides, nah. And he made the shot on top of everything else. So if you're the Knicks, I think you look at this game and go, okay, look, you can't fake desperation. That's always my rule when 2 teams are somewhat evenly matched and one's up 2-0 and the other one isn't. And it's just really hard for you to match the intensity and desperation when you're up 2-0 of the team that's down 0-2 when you think that the teams are close. But it was a bit of a free throw fest last night because Brunson ended up with 10 of 12 from the free throw line, 39 points overall. I think Brunson, by the way, watching specifically after struggling so much in the first 2 games, I think he was better at just his attack angles. I think he was a little bit more calculated in taking his time, going, all right, if this is the way they're playing me with all of this size, which has been really, really effective. And, again, credit to Oubre and Batum. They've done just a really good job with it, but I felt like Brunson was more like, okay, if this is what you're going to do, I may slow things down and then think of a better angle of attack. But if you're looking at, 33 free throws for two players, Philly probably feels good if they're going to get that kind of game again, officiating wise. I think if you're New York, you're like, all right, Hartenstein ended up dealing with foul trouble all night. Mitchell Robinson played 12 minutes. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Embiid, health-wise, the best he's looked, I think, in the entire series. Hello, Orlando. Welcome to the playoffs. Tough sled in those first two games. Wasn't feeling great. It's like, why did you pick them? Cleveland's so much better with their four guys than Orlando's four guys, who you really like, Ryan. You really like them. But not a lot of scoring guarantees out of that group. I have a working theory. It's not perfect. It can be dismantled certainly many nights. But I always feel like you need three guys that you always know can add up to 60 points. In some ways, three guys scoring 60 points is better than two guys scoring 60 points. I think that makes sense. But again, it can be destroyed at times. And when I'd look at Orlando, I'd go, where are the 60? Where are the 60? Well, if it's Paolo at 25, that means I only need, 35 more points. Can I guarantee myself 35 points from Franz and Suggs? Right? Knowing that somebody else is going to be disappointing, knowing somebody else is going to be a bit of a surprise. But if you're only getting 40 from your main three guys, is there a fourth guy that makes it up with 20? Now you're starting to ask a lot, especially in the playoffs, where Cleveland may be a 60-point two-guy team without really knowing who the third guy would be. And now some of you are listening to this being like, hey, come up with a new theory. But it makes sense that I think the balance of three in a playoff game means you're going to have to guard more consistently. And there isn't any one thing that you think you can take away from the other team as much. All right. So Orlando scares me a little bit with that. But Paolo last night, 31, 14, and 5, and no turnovers after 15 turnovers in games 1 and 2. I still think his job is as tough as maybe any single offensive player in the playoffs right now. It's really on a guy who's like 2 years into this, his first playoff series ever. Hey, save us. I think he's being asked to do more than maybe any single number one option for any other team. If I run through it again in my head pretty quickly, yeah, I think I'm right. I think I'm right on that one. Okay. This game got off to a start where I was like, oh, wow, I'm just going to be impossibly wrong on this thing. Cleveland's back. What do you think about him for the second round, which is his own exercise off the other side of what's going on with Boston and Miami? I don't have anything on that other than I went back and watched all the threes. I think it's a combination of everything. I think there's some bad closeouts, but I also think that there is some strategy there where it was double Hero. And then if Hero wants to kick it to somebody else, you're giving up something. The same way we've watched with Philly and New York, where it's like, hey, Josh Hart, you can go ahead and shoot those threes. When I've watched OKC, it's like, hey, Najee Marshall, if you want to take those threes, go ahead. If you hit them, great. But like, this is how we're going to play you. And I think Boston looked at it as going, if we're going to trap Hero off of this high screen and roll, and then we still have to worry about Bam, and then Bam's going to hit everything. And then when they swing it to somebody at the three-point line, all of those guys are going to hit something. I mean, look, Boston was down 6 points as Miami had set a record, a franchise record for three-point makes, I think at that point when it was 22. So I know it's funny because if Boston were brand new this year and this good, people are like, oh, that's weird. They lost game 2. And instead it's like, nope. The fraud alert text on your boy's phone after that game, it's just hilarious. 10 different people going, this team sucks. They're frauds. Like, sucks seems a little harsh, but because of the history, we understand all the PTSD. All right, so back to Orlando and Cleveland. As I go, hey, the only thing I have on this is another 3 minutes. I always think it's funny when you bet on a game and how dumb we all are in the very beginning, because this game was 10-3, and I'm just sitting here going, 10-3. Like, well, hold on. Got another 46 minutes or so, 45 minutes to go on this one. So relax. And you know how when you bet a team, like say you bet a team and you're getting 2.5 points and they're up 6-0 and you're hanging out with your buddies and it's 6-0 and you're like, I'm so smart. I'm so good at this gambling thing. Look at me. Or the other side of it. You're laying 2.5, or your team is down 6-2, and you got maybe one of your buddies to get in out with you. He's like, dude, are you serious? I can't believe we're going to lose this. You're like, it's 6-2. It's 6-2. I don't think it's over yet. I think there's still more time. However, it happens whenever you do it. It's almost impossible to avoid doing it. I've done it way too many times. And even last night, I'm like 10-3. 10-3, huh? They're not going to be able to score. Orlando was missing everything the very first few minutes of this game. And some of those looks were really good. But Mitchell and Garland were terrible, and they were down 30 with 9 minutes to go in the third quarter. The backcourt for Cleveland finished 8-26. I'm not sure that specifically is going to happen again, despite knowing that Orlando's defense is really their strength. Something to pay attention to here. Jonathan Isaac's minutes, 29 to 20 to 16 minutes. 16 minutes in game number 3. What does that mean? Came off the bench as well. So it felt a little bit like it was a waste to use him because defensively it wasn't this matchup that you felt like, hey, we've got Jonathan Isaac on Jarrett Allen now, so good luck, Cleveland. It just doesn't speak to Isaac's strength. A longer-term thing, though, all right, much like kind of Philadelphia and going, are you going to get that same kind of game, that free throw thing on both sides? Because if you're Philly, you love that. You're like, cool, please call the game like that the rest of the series. It's not going to happen, but you get the point. There's a longer-term thing, I think, with Orlando when I look at it and I go, is Franz off of Paolo the thing I thought it was? I don't have an answer. I'm just simply asking myself the question when I watch them more. And that Franz is this big wing who can attack, who can defend, who can switch. There's a lot of boxes here that he checks that you get really excited about. But off of Paolo, in theory, it's like, hey, that's really good. We've got these big, multiple wings, can handle, can pass. These guys are like OKC dream players, right? This is the whole blueprint down there with the Thunder. But if Franz can't consistently be a threat from the outside, it makes that pairing much more challenging moving forward. So we know this year he's 28% from three. Doing some Hubie Brown for you. But you look at, but he was 35, 36% from three the first 2 seasons. You go back to the college stats at Michigan. 31% freshman year, sophomore year, 34%. 84% from free throw in college, 85% from free throw in the NBA. There's enough numbers in there to tell you that he's not a 28% from three guy. But if he's not at least 34, 35, have to respect it or hurt you for not respecting it, long term, I worry about that pairing if Franz isn't a better shooter. May not mean anything right now. Don't have an answer to it. But that's where I'm at. We finish in Los Angeles. Denver, 11 straight against the Lakers. Game 2, D'Angelo Russell. I'd like to introduce you to the real versus Denver D'Angelo Russell. 0 for 7 from the floor. And that's the problem, is that, hey, man, you guys were dogging D'Angelo Russell. And I don't want to do like an every 48 hours told you so battle where we're just, anyone that likes him is telling the people, you know what I mean? We're just going circles with this whole thing. My question would be this, like, when you have someone like this that's capable of having the game that he had in 2, but also capable of doing what he did in 3, what do you really have? Like, what's the sum of that player? All right. With all the other little things that we've talked about with him and his lack of intensity, lack of attention to detail, just a lackadaisical player. This was it was like LA was still in this game with a score and it felt like they were dead. I think this is like emotionally draining for them. I think the close of this game, like every time I'd look at the score, I'd be like, hey, this score is not out of reach here. But I think it's this really frustrating thing of, it's like playing a video game and just going, I don't know how to beat this guy. Like, I don't know how to beat this guy without the internet and looking it up. That's what I saw from this Lakers group going, we just can't beat these guys. And it's really frustrating. So even if we think we're close to this whole thing, we just kind of know what's going to happen. And last night, every time against Denver, it feels inevitable. The other problem for LA, their hack of free throws plus 14 in game 1, minus 4 in game 2, minus 5 in game 3. I looked at the LeBron part of this. Thought he was bad last night. I know he scored a bunch of points. Aaron Gordon had 15 boards. To be nice, I'd say a third of those were against LeBron, where LeBron just wasn't super locked in with it. There's one offensive rebound from Gordon where he puts it back up, and then LeBron has his hands out looking at people going like, what the fuck? And you're going, yeah, that was your guy. Like, what? Who are you looking at? And I did post the video of him last night dribbling the ball off his leg, not because I thought it was funny. It's because he turned back around to Prince to get mad about a screen that wasn't set, where that happens all of the time. And it was like, hey, here we go. And I think the sad part for Lakers fans is we're about 30 hours away if Denver gets game 4 of isolation LeBron. Not on the basketball court. I'm talking about off the basketball court, where he's going to make sure that you know that he doesn't approve of this, but he's also not associated with this, which I think is always a really, really bad look. I'm capable of doing both things. Praising one of my favorite players I've ever seen play this game, praising him after game 2. Love that's one of my favorite LeBron games ever in game 2. But the part of him that I don't like, I just don't understand why Rich Paul or Maverick wouldn't go like, hey, this is a really bad look. So make sure you don't go out of your way to prove some kind of point about being upset about the rest of the roster. Maybe the Lakers would have gotten somebody else in the first round, but they're just not better than this team. And look, maybe he doesn't have to isolate himself because D'Angelo Russell already did it for him. Was he checking his phone during the huddle? So, ugly night for the Lake Show.